huge thing that I get asked about on a regular basis is cheese contamination and milk going bad. And I thought it would be a good idea to make a video that covers both of those things so that I have a place to send people. Because I spend a lot of time troubleshooting this, and I want to troubleshoot this with you because I think it's an important thing to figure out. But also, having an in-depth video will help you faster and better than me trying to troubleshoot you through emails and Instagram DMs and all that jazz. So I just got in the barn and I had a pretty good laugh because I was like, yay, the cows are here, perfect for filming. Also, the pigs are here. Are the pigs supposed to be in here? No, but here they are. Oh, there's a rooster too. It's a funny farm. The current pen that the pigs are in, they keep figuring out how to get out. We're not quite sure how they keep getting out, but all they do is they get out and they come in with the cows, or they get out and they hang out in the front yard with the dogs. So we're not too concerned. So usually it goes something like, help, here's a picture of this cheese. It's got a lot of holes. Are these holes good or bad? The first questions I always ask are, is the cheese like squishy? Like, is it like a sponge texture? What does it smell like? And this helps determine, there's 3 main types of holes. Four types of holes. There is mechanical holes, meaning you cooked and stirred the curds too firm so they didn't want to press together well, or you pressed it too hard or too soft and it didn't press together well. Mechanical. Safe. Usually wobbly shaped. The texture of your cheese is great. The shape of your cheese isn't odd. It hasn't changed in shape. They're just wobbly holes. I'm going to show you some up in the house in a bit. The next type of holes that are good holes are like Swiss cheese holes. You can get these on purpose by making Swiss cheese. I just put a chicken fly up on my back. Or we can end up with these accidentally because your cultures get a second wind. One way that I know these are good holes versus bad holes is, again, the texture of the cheese and the smell of the cheese. The cheese smells good, it doesn't smell yeasty or bad, and the texture is firm, or as that cheese should be. It's not like really squishy or spongy. It didn't like blow up and suddenly it's twice the size because of all the bubbles in it. Bad dairy looks and smells bad. Looks or smells bad. Bad dairy has red flags. Okay, friends? Bad dairy has red flags. So then we get into bad holes. Bad holes would be like if there's a bunch of tiny holes and the cheese is like squishy, like a sponge, probably smells like nothing. Classic coliform contamination. Or yeasty. Again, holes, big, it will smell like yeast. Here's my unpopular opinion. Making sourdough and bread and cheese at the same time is not going to give you yeast contamination unless you literally stir your bread and then stir your cheese. You're not going to get yeast contamination. Okay, friends? I have kept, like, our counter has mead, like wild fermented mead, fermenting vegetables, clabber culture, sourdough culture, cheese air drying on a plate, like all these things, same time. No cross-contamination issues unless you like touch one and then touch the other, then you're directly inoculating it. Okay, so in fall to spring, our root cellar in our basement, or our cauldron, is cool enough to store cheese. The rest of the year, we shove all our fridges full of cheese. Yeah, this is not ideal, but it is what it is. Actually, it's totally fine to age cheese in a fridge. It's just that we kind of want this fridge for other things, not just cheese. So let's find you some cheese that has holes in it and show you what I mean. Okay, so here we go. See these? They're uneven. They are not, cheese is firm. Oh, I gotta sneeze. The other thing, if you're like fairly certain the cheese is good and not contaminated, let it age for minimum 60 days. Because in 60 days, if something bad's gonna happen, it's gonna happen within 60 days. So just leave it then, and then that will help you figure out that. So here's another example of holes. These holes were actually more like Swiss holes, and these were unintentional. This was like I let it air dry on the counter too long, and then it started to swell in the middle, but the sides were still pinched. It wasn't like the whole thing was swelling. And I cut it open, and I saw they were kind of just like Swiss holes. That's cool. Just unintentionally made Swiss cheese. I don't do this often, but it's not uncommon for me to do. Okay, so here's one that is more gnarly. These are yeasty holes. However, yeast isn't bad for you. It can just often not taste great. So I labeled it as yeasty, and it's just not one we pull out for company. And it actually tastes just fine. Are you trying to get to the dog food, Mac?
Yeah, I need to feed the puppies.
Oh, hey, I wanted to tell you too, if you go to venisonfordinner.com, you don't have to scroll down very far before you find Home Dairy Without the BS. And this is a free, engaging presentation for those who, you know, the DIYer who's fed up with your grocery bill. This could be because you have your own milk cow. This could be because you have a great herd share. This could be because you want to take advantage of on-sale dairy you find and you want to make things. But this is all about how we got into having milk cows, some basics on keeping, breeding, calving dairy cows, and how I make all of our own dairy. Since 2019 now, we have not bought dairy. If there's dairy that's store-bought in our house, that's an odd thing. That's unusual. If you have one round of contamination, clean everything really well. Boil your cheesecloth, bleach your milk bucket, bleach your, or boil or hydrogen peroxide, however you sanitize things, friends. A spray bottle of diluted bleach is just honestly the easiest. Your cheese press, your cheese pot, sanitize everything, okay? And then make cheese again. However, if you are having persistent issues, this is where you need a little deeper troubleshooting. So let me show you. No, I'm not going to show you because I don't have any contamination issues. Let me tell you my process in how I figure out where the contamination is coming from, because there is a lot of places that you can have contamination from. It could be your cow. It could be your water source. It could be your handling system. It could be what you milk into. It could be how you're making cheese. There is a lot of ways to contaminate, and when you think about all that, it's overwhelming. So let me walk you through this. Because we want to start at the source, you're going to start with your cow. You're going to get California mastitis test, which is a really big word, and it sounds fancy, but it's really simple. It's also called CMT. It's this purple concentrate that you dilute in water. You can get like a fancy paddle system that's got like 4 dishes on one paddle. Or you can use jars. I have showed how to do this in the past. I'm gonna see if I can remember what video it is and I'll link it for you. But essentially, you mix equal parts with cow's milk straight from the udder and the CMT liquid. You swirl it around, which is where if you have the paddle, you can like put the liquid in each squirt from each quarter, swirl it around and see. And it's faster if you have the paddle, but I did it just with like a 1/2 pint mason jar forever. So you need to test each quarter separately to know which quarter even has the infection so that you can just treat that one and not overuse antibiotics and also save money on antibiotics. So if you're using just the mason jar method, you also have to bring a jar of water to rinse out that jar between testing quarters. So if it gets like boogery, there is bacteria happening and your cow has some sort of either mastitis coming on or they've got some sort of subclinical infection going on. If your cow shows up as having some sort of infection, you're going to need to treat that. If there's obviously nothing pressing showing, like your cow otherwise looks fine, I feel like you have a bit of time. You can then, I really like using Synergy animal products because their withholding and dumping is so minimal compared to antibiotics. And actually the cost of treating with Synergy animal products versus antibiotics is cheaper for us. It takes a couple weeks to get them in Canada. In the States, it's probably like a couple days and you have it. You could use Dynamint cream, which is on my blog, which is a lotion that you rub on their udder that helps. And when you rub that on, you'll often have like gunk come out in the milk. So this obviously is targeted, like that section of troubleshooting is targeted at someone who has a milk cow. If you are getting milk from someone else and you're getting persistent contamination issues, skip this part and start at the next part, but you may need to think twice about either asking them about their systems or maybe they're not the best place. Because the thing is, you can drink the milk and be totally fine, but once you warm that milk, you culture it, you're warming it, you're encouraging bacterias. So if your cow comes back clean, or you've gone through the effort to get them clean and the CMT comes back clean, what's your next step? Your next step is to make something super simple but cultured like quark, which is on my blog. I want you to take milk straight from milking time or straight from your raw milk pickup and you could make just a pint, I usually make a gallon, of quark. Normally you would only let this sit for 12 to 24 hours. I want you to leave it for a full 48 hours. Yes, this will be stronger than you want to eat, but this will give things time to, like, if bad things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen. You want the quark to sink, to shrink, to have, it could have a couple little holes, like that's okay, but if it rises, if it floats, if suddenly it's like growing out of your jar, red flags, you still have some sort of contamination issue going on. And this is when you're going to need to look into what you're milking with. Also, if your milk is going bad or your cheese isn't working out, especially if you feel like your milk is going off really fast, check your fridge temperature. This sounds really simple, but your fridge could actually be warmer than you think it is. Put an instant-read thermometer in a jar of milk and see how cold it is. So if you're hand milking, maybe this means you want to add in, maybe you wash the cow's udder differently. Maybe you need to filter the milk differently. If you're machine milking, how are you cleaning the machine? Do you need to take it all apart and do an acid soak to like deep clean it? That's an important thing to look at the process of how the milk is getting from the cow to you. If your quark comes back good, this tells me that part of your issue might be in how you're storing the milk. So what are you storing the milk in? Is your fridge cold enough? Are your containers clean enough? We started doing saran wrap and then the milk jar lid, because a lot of our milk jar lids are like kind of so-so. And this really helped when we were having contamination issues a year or two ago. I also want to say, how old of milk are you using? Are you using milk that's 3 days or fresher? Because there is bacteria that only start to grow once milk has been in the fridge cold. There's cold-loving bacteria. And I know this can feel scary, like there's a lot of things going on, but friends, it's really not. And once you figure out what that little problem is and you get it fixed, you'll be back on track again. So your cow is clean, your machine has been sanitized, your quark has come back good. But friends, if you've had contamination issues, you have some like coliform PTSD. You know what I'm talking about if you've had this issue. So what I want you to do is now you're gonna make a wheel of cheese that is not a washed curd cheese. And this is to rule out your water being the issue. Because when you make something like Gouda or Butterkaiser, Buttercase, Colby, you're introducing your water, a water source, which is another place that contamination can come in. So I want you to make something like the Alpine wheel from my free cheese making course, Clabber Culture Without the BS, or I want you to make Asiago from my cheese making without the BS, which is my paid cheese making course. Those are two simple, not washed curd, but cultured cheeses, which will help you figure out if maybe your water was the issue. Now, if it's persistent yeast contamination that you're having, some people say that it can come from your spices that you use, but I will tell you, I have a friend who's like a certified cheese plant person, whatever, works in cheese plants, also is a home family milk cow person, also is a dairy farmer, and she has told me that in cheese plants, they just buy their big bulk thing of spices and they use it till it's done. They don't sanitize it, they don't boil it, they don't use a new pouch every time. So this is possible for the home cheesemaker as well. You don't have to be super freaky about your sanitization. I'm also gonna grab a screen recording from my course for you and show you some bad cheeses. Because in my cheese making course, Cheese Making Without the BS, I have a whole long resource that shows pictures and examples on helping you troubleshoot contamination. So we're going to start with mechanical holes. These are some ones that have pretty significant mechanical holes, but it didn't affect the taste. Sometimes the holes mean that whey got trapped, and that might make a bitter cheese. This one here you can see has a bit of blue mold, but blue mold is a perfectly edible mold. This is not a red flag for me. And then we get into coliform, which doesn't really smell, but it has bubbles, and it usually, as you can see, floats in the brine. This is like a huge red flag. If it floats in the brine, it should float flush. This one is yeast and coliform. That was Marius splashed some soup into my cheese pot, and that's what happened. This one here, I don't even know what happened. I was sent this photo, but it is a gnarly coliform contamination. And this last one is one where a friend made a farmhouse cheddar, which is not really cultured at all. It's like rennet and something else. And it did that funny thing, and she said it smelled like a wet dog. So if after, if you CMT your cow and then you treat your cow and you're still having issues, I would get the milk cultured, because this would tell you what bacteria you're dealing with, and then you can have a more targeted approach at how you treat it, not just throwing darts at a wall. I will say as well, in your cheese pot, your curds should always sink, not float. If cheese floats, red flag, not good. So I hope this was helpful for you today, and if you have any more questions about cheese contamination, pop them in the comments and I will answer them. I have videos, I have a whole video series that I will link on washing the cow, milking the cow, getting the milk in the fridge, like all those handling things. So that's why I didn't go over them today, because I have videos on them already. So I will share those for you in the description box so you can find all those videos.